Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the heart of Oakridge, a small town nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, the tranquility of early autumn was interrupted by a chilling discovery. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting shadows that whispered secrets among the fallen leaves. It was a day much like any other, with the quiet hum of suburbia punctuating the air, children riding bikes, dogs barking, and neighbors tending to their gardens. But for one man, the routine would devolve into chaos. A local handyman, Doug Mercer, had taken a shortcut through the dense trees behind the old creek when he stumbled upon something unsettling near the water's edge. A tattered blue shirt. Its vibrant color stood in stark contrast to the muted browns and greens of the surrounding foliage. Doug's heart raced as he approached cautiously, his instincts pricking at the back of his mind. He could see the material was caught on something submerged in the shallow water. Kneeling, he pulled the shirt free and recoiled in horror as the outline of a hand emerged with it, skeletal and fragile. Panic washed over him. The serene beauty of Oakridge, with its vibrant autumn hues, now felt suffocated by an oppressive chill that swept through the trees. Doug dropped the shirt like it was fire, sprinting back toward the town, his mind racing a need to call the police. As the sun set behind the horizon, orange and pink giving way to deep indigo, the quiet town was soon filled with the echo of sirens. They carved through the stillness, marking the beginning of a haunting investigation that would unravel the lives of those living in Oakridge. The victim. As darkness enveloped Oakridge, investigators meticulously combed the area surrounding the creek. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of damp soil and decaying leaves. Flashlights pierced the gloom, illuminating the haunting silhouette of the trees like skeletal sentinels. Among the debris, they discovered a series of personal pieces of torn fabric, a silver bracelet, and a crumpled photograph that would soon lead them to a name. The victim, identified as 18-year-old Clara Ward, was a local girl known for her bright smile and kind-hearted spirit. Clara stood out in a town that thrived on simplicity. Ambitious and passionate, she often volunteered at the animal shelter, spending her weekends nurturing abandoned pets. The photograph found with her belongings captured her innocence, framed by the laughing faces of classmates at a recent summer barbecue. As acquaintances were questioned, a damning portrait of her last days began to take shape. Clara had been increasingly withdrawn, confiding in friends about her growing concerns involving a mysterious figure that seemed to haunt her. Whispers of an obsession turned quickly into worry as she described late-night encounters, never quite articulating the full extent of her fears. While breathing life into her story, detectives canvassed the neighborhood, piecing together Clara's last movements. Each loose end was tied with painstaking detail: a trip to the local market, an unprompted visit to a secluded park, conversations in hushed tones, and faint hints at her fragile state of mind. As they delved deeper, they unearthed a darker undercurrent, clouding the picturesque charm of this small town. The crime scene. The atmosphere at the creek thickened with tension as investigators meticulously documented the scene. Flashing blue and red lights cast an eerie glow on the underbrush, deepening the shadows and altering the familiar landscape into something menacing. The local police cordoned off the area, marked by bright yellow tape fluttering in a gentle breeze, a tragic boundary between the ordinary and the grim. Detective Mark Jensen, with over a decade of experience etched into the creases of his brow, maintained his poker face as he crouched near the water's edge. The discovery of Clara's remains had catapulted the case into a nightmare. The remains were battered and worn, suggesting she had endured significant trauma. The crime scene promised secrets that would unravel over time, yet the details were scattered like shards from a broken mirror, leaving only devastating reflections. Team members labeled evidence with practiced efficiency. Each item gathered was a thread to be woven into a narrative that spelled out a horror far too real. Among them were Clara's belongings, found just a few feet away, each personal artifact telling its own story and amplifying her absence. The tattered blue shirt was laid next to a pair of jeans, evidence of a struggle. Perhaps each stitch and tear spoke of desperation, a plea lost amidst the drowning silence of the creek. As the hours wore on, the air grew heavier with both darkness and uncertainty. Detective Jensen knew the real challenge lay ahead. It wasn't merely to find out who had committed this crime, but to bring a sense of closure to a town that was now shrouded in fear. Each question unanswered left the community hanging in a state of dread, and with the sun steadily climbing high, the investigation was only just beginning. The early investigation. In the days following the grim discovery, the small town of Oakridge transformed from an idyllic community to a place steeped in anxiety. Yellow tape fluttered ominously around the creek as detectives, led by Jensen, initiated a thorough investigation into Clara Ward's tragic demise. Community leaders held meetings, urging neighbors to remain vigilant, their usual faces masked in worry and suspicion. Detectives turned to Clara's inner circle, her friends and co-workers, delving into the minutiae of her life. Each interview unfolded a tapestry of emotions. Friendships interwoven with unspoken tension. The local diner buzzed with whispers of Clara's last moments, each table contributing its own version of the truth, while Jensen and his team sifted through the fragments. Clara's best friend, Mia Thompson, shared her concern about a recent shift in Clara's demeanor. The carefree girl she once knew was fading, replaced by someone who seemed haunted. Mia spoke of late-night messages that Clara had shared about feeling watched, of unsettling encounters at the park, and a new obsession with an enigmatic figure who often lingered nearby. With each detail, Clara's life became a puzzle piece pointing toward something or someone lurking just outside the view of ordinary life. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the town, Jensen's team dug deeper, seeking out the mysterious figure Clara had feared. They revisited her last known whereabouts, scrutinizing surveillance footage and interviewing those from the nearby convenience store. A figure caught on camera late one evening exited shortly before Clara's final sight. The image was grainy, but it revealed just enough to ignite a spark of dread. The silhouette of a tall man, hands shrouded in a loose hoodie, hiding a face obscured in darkness. The dead ends. As the investigation trudged on, the initial glimmer of hope faded, leaving detectives grappling with a growing sense of frustration. Leads that had once seemed promising turned out to be mere illusions, leading nowhere but into the fog of uncertainty. Each day, as the sun rose over Oakridge, it revealed the same haunting reality. Killer remained unaccounted for, and Clara Ward's killer was still lurking somewhere in the shadows. The investigation team diligently tracked down anyone who matched the profile of the man in the surveillance footage. Each tip from the community was pursued like lifelines thrown into turbulent waters, but leads evaporated as quickly as they surfaced. Time and again, witness sightings turned into dead ends, each new name an empty promise. The figure, now referred to in hushed tones as the Phantom, slipped further into obscurity with every week that passed. Detective Jensen found himself staring at a board cluttered with images of Clara and pieces of evidence, his mind racing through the possible scenarios that might tie together their fragmented investigation. Several potential suspects emerged, each dismissed as soon as their alibis arrived: schoolmates, neighbors, even transient workers who had frequented the town. Everyone seemed plausible, yet no one could be tied directly to her tragic fate. Frustration mounted as community members grew restive. Opportunistic gossip thrived among residents, spiraling out of control like a wildfire, engulfing potential leads in a thick fog of misdirection. Jensen often felt the weight of looming whispers on his back as he roamed the precinct. With mounting pressure to deliver answers, he knew it was only a matter of time before distilling the truth from this growing chaos morphed from a challenge into a consuming obsession. A break in the case. Weeks of relentless searching, questioning, and sifting through false leads finally bore fruit when a breakthrough emerged: a tip that arrived late one Tuesday evening. It came from a local man who frequented the same convenience store Clara had visited just before her disappearance. He recounted a puzzling encounter with a young woman who shared Clara's distinct features, exchanging heated words with a figure matching the description of the elusive Phantom. The man's recollection was hazy, yet it offered a crucial piece of the puzzle. He detailed a narrative filled with unease. Clara had appeared flustered and agitated, her voice low but urgent. While he hadn't thought much of it at the time, a pre-dawn chill settled over him as memories of their exchange emerged. He recalled the man, tall and clad in dark clothing, standing unnervingly close in intimidation, cloaked in casual familiarity. As Jensen pursued this new lead, he and his team began combing through social media for any potential connections between Clara and individuals in her life. Hours spent scrolling through photographs and posts produced a startling revelation. Clara had reached out to acquaintances seeking advice about feeling harassed by an unnamed person. Piecing these threads together, they discovered a mutual friend who revealed that Clara had a former boyfriend, Aaron Mills, a lanky, quiet young man with a temper. Last seen weeks before Clara's death, he had a known history of violent outbursts when stripped of control. With this new focus, detectives scrabbled through Aaron's digital footprint, unearthing social media exchanges and messages that hinted at obsession and jealousy. As his name surfaced, Jensen's heart raced. This could be the break they had desperately needed. Each lead now tied back to Aaron, pending verification as the timeline of events rapid fitted together, drawing them closer to unraveling the mystery of Clara's tragic end. The suspect. As the investigation honed in on Aaron Mills, the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation. Detective Jensen's intuition hummed with urgency. This was no longer an abstract puzzle, but rather the unfolding reality of a potential suspect. With every detail acquired about Aaron's life, the pieces began to take on a more sinister form. Following up on security footage from the convenience store, the team noted a narrow window where Aaron and Clara both appeared within minutes of each other, an intersection of lives that culminated in tragedy. In interviews with classmates and acquaintances, they painted a troubling picture of Aaron, a young man whose infatuation with Clara had twisted into something darker when she attempted to sever ties. The whispers denoted a cycle of jealousy, tension thickening like storm clouds. Late one chilly evening, Jensen decided it was time to confront Aaron. Knocking on the door of a modest duplex, he could feel the weight of the moment hanging in the air. When Aaron answered, his demeanor seemed deceptively casual. dressed in a wrinkled t-shirt and shorts. He blinked as recognition dawned in his eyes, though the smile that followed was strained under the circumstances. "Detective Jensen," he greeted, his voice betraying a hint of anxiety. Jensen wasted no time, launching into questions designed to gauge Aaron's reaction. The young man responded fluidly at first, yet Jensen watched carefully for signs of defensiveness. Subtle shifts in body language began to contort as the interrogation pressed on. Aaron's gaze flicked to the door, the windows, as if calculating an escape route from the gravity of the accusations that hung thick in the air. Throughout the conversation, small details emerged, an erratic story about his whereabouts on the night Clara vanished, peppered with inconsistencies that raised red flags in Jensen's mind. Each revelation unfurled like a taut string begging to snap under pressure. As the night grew darker, Jensen was determined to make sense of the jagged puzzle pieces that could finally lead them to the truth. The trial. Months passed, and the small town of Oakridge braced itself for the impending trial of Aaron Mills. The atmosphere bristled with anxiety and anticipation as residents filled the courthouse, each seat an unspoken plea for justice. A subtle tension rippled through the crowd, a shared burden of grief woven from Clara Ward's tragic end. The courtroom was subdued, stark white walls lined with rows of polished wooden benches where friends, family, and curious townsfolk gathered. Clara's parents sat in the front row, their faces etched with grief and resolve, steadfast in their pursuit of the truth that hung heavily in the air. Detectives Jensen and his team were also present, resolutely supporting the case that had consumed a part of their lives over the last several months. As the proceedings began, the prosecution painted a damning portrait of Aaron. They presented evidence of his troubling obsession with Clara, displayed text messages that depicted a tumultuous relationship tinged with jealousy, threats, and emotional volatility. Each message, read aloud in the quiet courtroom, hung like a shadow over Aaron, reinforcing the narrative that had begun to unfold on that fateful day at the creek. Amidst the wave of evidence presented, the defense sought to cast doubt. They argued for reasonable uncertainty, painting Aaron as a victim of circumstance, an awkward young man caught in a web of misunderstandings. Witnesses for the defense characterized him as shy and misunderstood, someone struggling to cope with rejection, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of the jurors. As the trial progressed, Clara's essence echoed in the testimonies, reverberating through the room as friends shared heart-wrenching memories. Jensen observed the jury closely, their faces shifting beneath the weight of the testimony, some expressing empathy, others disbelief. Each hour passed as an eternity until, ultimately, they would render a decision that could avenge Clara's untimely death or allow darkness to prevail. The aftermath. The verdict shattered the stillness of the Oakridge courtroom as the jury delivered their decision. A collective breath held in the throats of everyone present. Aaron Mills was found guilty of the murder of Clara Ward, the judge's gavel slamming down with a resounding finality that echoed through the silence. The weight of the moment settled heavily upon the room as Clara's family embraced, tears mixing with a complex tapestry of relief and lingering sorrow. In the weeks that followed, the aftermath rippled through the community like a shockwave. The news swept across town. Some rejoiced, feeling a sense of closure in Clara's name, while others struggled with the reality that such darkness had infiltrated the innocence of their own streets. Local schools held memorials, banners bearing Clara's image adorning the halls as students shared stories of her kindness. The loss transformed into a reminder to cherish each day, fostering deeper connections among residents. Detective Jensen wrestled with his own reflections, during this turbulent time. The satisfaction of bringing a perpetrator to justice was tempered by the haunting knowledge of what Clara had endured. He spent hours cataloging memories of the investigation, recognizing that although justice served might bring peace, the scars remained on the community's collective consciousness. As Aaron was sentenced to life in prison, the courtroom alike began to transform into a somber closure, yet the echoes of Clara's laughter continued to resonate in the hearts of those who knew her. The town sought to heal. Candles flickered at vigils held near the creek, where flowers were placed in memory of a life extinguished far too soon. In time, Oakridge slowly emerged from the shadows, the lessons learned becoming ingrained within its fabric. Those impacted by this tragedy became advocates for the importance of mental health awareness and compassion among peers, a steadfast commitment to ensuring no light would ever be snuffed out in silence again. Reflection. As the seasons changed in Oakridge, memories of Clara Ward coalesced into an enduring legacy, serving as both a haunting reminder and a catalyst for change in the community. Detective Jensen found solace during his early morning walks alongside the creek, now surrounded by vibrant foliage that signaled life's persistence. Each step resonated with the lessons learned through loss of truth that shaped his path ahead. Though the pain of Clara's death lingered, it only deepened his commitment to both his role as a detective and his dedication to his community. He attended seminars focused on mental health and advocacy for those in tumultuous relationships, determined to transform the tragedy into a tool for awareness. It was during these moments of reflection that Jensen understood the paramount value of speaking openly, that sharing stories could save lives. The town embraced Clara's memory, celebrating her spirit through initiatives aimed at empowering young people to forge healthy connections and speak out against the silence that often surrounds emotional turmoil. A quaint garden emerged beside the creek, a tribute to Clara, with plaques bearing her name and encouraging messages that echoed her essence. As he watched the sun rise one crisp morning, illuminating the garden in golden hues, Detective Jensen felt a harmonious blend of hope and memory. In every bloom, he envisioned not just the tragedy of what was lost, but also the incredible potential for what could be a brighter future, unmarred by the shadows of the past.